Hi everybody and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Cliona Moulton and I will be your moderator for this morning's session. I'm joined here today with Naman Tammuz, Chief Product Officer, who will be bringing us through our 2017 product innovations and also provide a sneak peek into what's to come in 2018. If you have any technical issues or questions for Naman, please message me through the chat function. We will also be taking questions at the end of the session, so please send them through and I'll keep them to the end. Now, over to you, Naman.
Thanks a lot, Cliona. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us on this webinar. Like Cliona mentioned, my name is Naman. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at Judo. What that means is that I'm responsible for our product management and design functions, and our user research and user testing. And ultimately, that goes towards guiding the company's product roadmap to make sure that we're A, making things people actually want to use, but importantly, B, also constantly improving those things over time based on what we hear from our customers. So, like Cliona mentioned, 2017 has been a pretty transformative year for us. And for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to be reviewing 10 of what we think are the most exciting new features that we've added to the product over the last year. Then I'll spend roughly another 5 to 10 minutes talking about some high-level themes for 2018 that we'll be focusing our efforts on over the year. And then I believe we'll have about 15 minutes at the end to answer some questions, after which we'll wrap up. Cool. So before we start, I thought I'd just set the scene a bit by giving a really short recap of Judo's vision and mission and value proposition. So as you can see on the screen here, our vision is to be the fuel for a more informed and connected economy. Towards that goal, we're on a mission really to become the world's largest source of private company information. Private companies make up 99.9% of every developed economy. And the value proposition that we provide to our users is about enabling businesses to find opportunities and mitigate risks by the richest source of information on those private companies and the people who run them. So with that little bit of context and without further ado, let's jump right in. Right, so I thought it would be nice to start by telling you about an entire new product line that we've completely overhauled this year, and that's our API. Firstly, for those of you not 100% familiar with what APIs actually are, they're basically a way for customers to access data, Judo's data in this case, programmatically in order to bring it into their in-house software instead of needing, for example, to use a web browser in order to access it. Judo's had an API for a while now. Some of you may already be customers. Lots of companies use it to integrate in our own data into their in-house systems and processes. Use cases for our API include the auto-population of web forms on company websites, automation of back-office processes in compliance and onboarding, automatic cleansing of CRM data for sales ops and marketing ops teams, and even direct integration of Judo's company information data into third-party products that are being resold as standalone items. So lots of different use cases. And in 2017, one of our top priorities was to really make sure that our company data API was absolutely the best on the market, bar none. And in order to do that, we actually chose to rebuild it from the ground up. Now, the number of features and specifications and so on is way too long to list here, but I will just give a few small headlines. First and foremost, we need people to understand this API. It doesn't have a user interface like web tools, and so one of the top priorities was to always provide detailed, up-to-date, plain English documentation that's always completely openly accessible to anyone. Secondly, for those of you with a slightly more technical background, the API has what's called an Open API specification. It's also known as a Swagger specification. That means that anyone using it can easily generate clients for it in a wide range of programming languages. So any language that you use, Python, PHP, Java, 30 other languages, it's instantaneous to get up and running with those. The data responses themselves are now rich and well structured and provide lots of additional context on the data points themselves. They enable very easy traversal of data linkages, which is one of the key value additions that Doodle adds when it connects data sets together. On the operational side, we have very high throughput. We support high throughput for intensive usage of this. Companies looking to cleanse tens and hundreds of thousands of data records or indeed power their own products from it, fully supported. And importantly, also on the commercial side, the API now comes with unlimited call volumes. So we've done away with kind of bean counting limits and quotas on calls, unlimited call volumes. And we've also changed the pricing structure to make it very, very simple, very modular. And there's lots of other things. We launched this new version of the API in March of 2017, and the feedback we've gotten so far from our customers, everyone who's upgraded from the previous versions of our API and new API customers so far has been really great. There'll actually be another announcement, a nice announcement about the API towards the end of this presentation, including details of how you can get your hands on it. But for now, let's move on to number 2. Right, so as most of you probably know, Doodle started as a product covering the UK and Ireland. But as I mentioned, as part of our vision for a more informed and connected economy, we're on a mission to become the world's largest source of private company information. Towards that goal, in 2017, we expanded our company coverage from what used to be 12 million companies in 2 countries, the UK and Ireland, to now covering 53 million companies spread across 31 countries. So that includes 27 countries across Europe, as well as 4 countries, Hong Kong, Israel, the Bahamas, and Bermuda, which are outside Europe. On the screen here, you can see just a small sample of some of the European countries we cover. But there are actually going to be more details around our international offering going to be announced in the next couple of weeks. But until then, you can already find all these companies, 53 million companies, full coverage in all of these 31 countries, by searching on the site and of course via the API as well. Right. So number 3 on the list is actually also related to our international expansion, specifically to the part of our vision which relates to uncovering connections between different data sets. So what we've done here is that by connecting the networks of corporate ownership, parent subsidiary ownership internationally across borders in all those countries that we mentioned, we've been able to build out a global map of company ownership. Those of you who are already users of the Doodle site will know that we call this the group graph. And it's actually one component of a bigger graph that we're building at Doodle, which we call here internally the business information graph. So the big for short, the BIG. The big is actually a representation of all the entities which make up the economy. Think about companies, directors, industries, locations, and so on. And those entities are linked up by all the connections which exist in the real world between them. So think of this as similar to Facebook's social graph, which connects people, or LinkedIn's professional graph, which connects professionals, also people, but in a professional context, but this time for businesses. So that's the business information graph. And I'll just add that in the context of the group graph, this has very powerful use cases, powerful uses across lots of different use cases, from sales and marketing teams who need to understand their prospects' decision-making hierarchy and organize their CRMs and so on, all the way to, as you'd expect, compliance teams that need to understand a company's chain of beneficial ownership in order to conduct their KYC and anti-money laundering checks. So those are our international group graphs, which are now fully traversable and accessible again on the site in a beautiful interface and via our API. Okay, number 4. So also on the theme of international data, in 2017, we brought on board an important new data set in the form of legal entity identifiers. So for those of you who may not have heard about this data set, it's relatively new. It sprung up about 5 years ago. So LEIs are actually a new global standard designed to create unique identifiers for any legal entity worldwide which is engaging in any kind of financial transactions. They were originally developed and launched by the G20 countries collaboratively in 2012. And they already cover about 650,000 companies worldwide, and that number is growing every day. They take the form of a 20-digit identifier, as their name suggests, one of their purposes is to break down effectively any form of effective monopoly based on someone having proprietary company identifiers, such as DUNS numbers in the US is the primary example of that, for those of you who are familiar with Dun & Bradstreet. Going forward, more and more companies with any kind of international presence are going to be registering and using LEIs to identify themselves when they're doing business both with other companies but also with government bodies. So now you can see any company's LEI, if they've registered for one, of course, at the top of their due deal profile, and you can also find any company just by searching, putting their LEI in search, in due deal search function. Right, so those are legal entity identifiers. Right, number 5 on the list is an example that I like of when we've taken part of the product which has already proven itself to be extremely valuable to our users, and really doubled down on it. And that's our advanced search interface. So some of you will know one of Doodle's core use cases is helping companies find new opportunities by enabling sales and marketing teams to quickly and easily, accurately identify their ideal prospects from amongst the entire universe of active companies. So we launched the first version of our advanced search interface actually in 2012, and since then we've constantly been working with loads of our customers to understand exactly how they're using it, how it's integrating into their workflows, and what the most useful new pieces of functionality would be for them. And in 2017 we distilled all that feedback, and earlier this year we released a brand new UI for search that's much more powerful and also much more beautiful and easy to use. So you can see a kind of small glimpse here in the screenshot, but advanced search now contains over 90 search filters. So we've added dozens of filters this year as well, which we'll talk about in a second. You can see clearly they're organized into categories. You now have multiple options for exporting your results, either to a file or directly into Salesforce, or saving them into a static list for sharing with your colleagues. You have the ability to append additional data columns directly to your search results right in this view. And search also now seamlessly integrates with all the other company and director lists that you've saved on Judo, so that you can include or exclude specific lists from your search results, which is something that people were often struggling with before and often struggle with in when conducting kind of ongoing prospecting activities. They need to know what they've looked at before or not. So that's all doable now. Right, so that's advanced search. Moving on, so I mentioned the 95 or so search filters that you can now use to find companies. I thought it would be worth giving a few examples of just ones that were added recently. So some of these filters, as you'd expect, capitalize on new data sets that have been incorporated into the product this year, while others introduce new functionality based on existing data that makes it easier to identify new prospects with very specific attributes, and analyze lists of customers and cross-reference multiple lists and so on. So just as a short list of kind of some examples that we've released of new filters in the last couple of months alone, I just have a short list here. So we can now search by for companies by the number and or name of any of their shareholders. You can search for companies based on their FCA registration status. You can search for companies by filtering only for their position in the group, in a corporate group. So if you're only interested in ultimate parent companies, you can filter just for those. If you're interested in subsidiaries, you can filter for those, and anything in between. For those of you with an international angle on their work, you can filter for companies that have foreign parents, foreign controlling companies. You can filter, you can cross-reference your search results with any of the static lists that you've saved on Judo. And we've also massively upgraded our location search, so that now for those 31 countries that we cover, and indeed globally, you can search for companies located in specific regions with very granular precision. So that's just in the last couple of months. So that's all in addition to the dozens of existing filters like detailed company financials, industry keywords, growth rates, and so on, which have existed for a while in search. Right, number 7 on the list is another example of existing functionality that we've had on the site for a year or so, and which we've improved a lot this year based on feedback from our customers, and that's list reports. So I mentioned earlier those lists of companies that you save on Doodle. So for those of you not familiar with them, for any saved list of companies on Doodle, you can instantly see access a detailed report on that list, consisting of really beautifully visualized and clear distributions and aggregations and maps of the different attributes of the companies in the list. So these are really amazing for identifying, for example, trends in your companies of interest, spotting outliers, and crucially for identifying ideal customer profiles within your customer list, basically. So what we've done is we've now made these reports interactive. You can click on any segment in the list report. You can see some of these different segments that appear here in the screenshot. You can click on any of those and get taken straight into advanced search to not only see the specific companies which make up that segment, but to either filter them down further if you want to refine that segment down, or more importantly, with one click, you can find more companies like those ones, but which aren't in your current list already. So what I really like about this feature is the fact that it basically enables users to close the loop in terms of their exploration of the company universe. We all know it's not enough to do a one-off search or to just get your current list of customers into Doodle, for example, for monitoring. You want to constantly be improving your understanding of these groups of companies, to find more companies like them, and so on. And interactive list reports really facilitate that journey. Okay. Right, so now we'll change tack a bit. For number 8 on the list, we turned our attention to another one of Doodle's core use cases, and that's in compliance. So the KYC, know your customer, and AML, anti-money laundering workflows. So most of you will know, so most AML checks, which basically any kind of regulated company needs to carry out, for example, any financial services company regulated by the FCA in the UK, those checks include identity verification checks, not just on companies, but as you'd expect, also on the individuals, specific individuals behind those companies. And what we were seeing was that many of our customers were having to combine multiple services in order to do these checks, using Doodle for the company verification part of the process and other services for the in-depth identity verification on individuals. So in order to make life easier for everyone, earlier this year in March, we announced a major partnership with Call Credit, who are one of the UK's leading consumer information providers. And as part of the partnership, we've launched an entirely new product, which we're calling KYC For Business. What this is a comprehensive business verification service, which in a single place brings together all the vital checks that you need to carry out on companies and directors and the key beneficiaries behind that business. So this service is currently offered as part of the new Doodle API, which we just discussed earlier, and that's in order to enable it to be really easily integrated into customers' existing onboarding processes, first and foremost. So I just had one example I thought it would be nice to mention to make it concrete of the efficiencies that this kind of partnership unlocks. So what you can now do is you have the ability to not just check the single company that's being onboarded, but to, in a really automated and easy way, traverse that company's full ownership tree using the group graph data we discussed earlier, checking all the business entities and the individuals behind them along the way. So that's literally something that you can do now. You can automate that to be done in a matter of seconds, basically, compared to what would be hours or days of research before. So really demonstrates the power of combining data sets and the automation that APIs enable, basically facilitate. Okay, so next up, we have another brand new feature for our compliance users, and that's the integration of PEPs, sanctions, and adverse media checks directly into company and director profiles on Doodle. So for those of you not familiar with these data sets, I'll just say a word about them. So PEPs stands for politically exposed persons. Sanctions obviously refers to a company or individual appearing on one of the numerous national and international sanctions lists. And adverse media refers to news mentions, which basically pose a reputational risk to a company or might point to some kind of improper activity. Now, checking for the appearance of a company or individual in one of these data sets is a legally required step in practically every AML anti-money laundering workflow. And again, we saw that many of our users were wasting precious time switching between Dudel and other services in order to carry out these different steps of the process. So in the same spirit of making sure Dudel users have all the information they need in a single place, we partnered with one of the UK's leading providers of global PEPs, sanctions, and adverse media data. And you can now conduct these checks both within the Dudel platform and via the Dudel API, of course. I'll just add that when using the platform, we provide things like fully exportable, time-stamped reports. These are things that compliance officers will expect and need in order to kind of discharge their regulatory requirements. So PDFs of original news articles, a full audit trail of previously conducted checks, etc. Also, as part of Dudel's collaboration features, you can view and access the PEPs and sanctions reports conducted by anyone on your team, which can also save the need for repeated checks, avoiding crossed wires within the onboarding process, and so on. So, very powerful feature integrated directly alongside all the rest of Dudel. And last, but definitely not least, is another upgrade of one of our existing features, and that's our news and social data. So earlier this year, we totally redesigned the news and social tab on company profiles to surface more relevant articles in real time in order to provide more context on the companies you're looking into. The new news tab gives you more control of the types of articles you're viewing as well. So it enables you to select between viewing news articles or viewing blog posts or even viewing discussion threads if that's relevant to your use case. And you can also sort articles either by their relevance or their publication time, depending on what you need to find out. So yeah, and perhaps what's most important is that articles are now surfaced in near real time from their publication. So this feature is powered by indexing something like on the order of 680 million postings a day, gathered from 75 million different web pages across 120 countries. So this is really a global product. It's available on every single company profile on Dudel, and it's very scalable. Right, so yeah, those were our top 10 product launches from 2017. For the next few minutes, we thought it would be nice to give you a sneak peek of what's to come in 2018.
Thank you, Naman. I think what would be great was you went through the list of 10 there. What, in your opinion, then, was your biggest win for 2017? What are you most proud of?
Oh, I think two of those from that list kind of come to mind for slightly different reasons. I think I'd say probably search, the new search UI, and the new API. So the reason, I guess, for each one separately, the reason I'm really proud and excited about the new search, advanced search, is because it's really an example where we've taken a very core part of Dudel, the starting point for lots of different workflows, and a real kind of very clear value driver for our customers, and taken a really customer-centric approach to developing it. Adding dozens of new search filters, while at the same time making it much more simple and really intuitive to use. So I'm kind of proud of that from a healthy product development perspective. It's been a really great experience. And secondly, on the API, the reason I'm really proud and excited about the work on the API is because basically I think it's really timely. We see the API as a core strategic priority for us going forward. Increasingly, we're seeing businesses, small and large, embracing digital transformation, digital tools, and understanding that by having services talk to each other fluidly, businesses can kind of pick and choose and combine the suite of tools that make the most sense for them. So I'm excited about kind of the ability to unleash due deal on everyone, due deal's data. So and actually we'll talk about that in the next section on that topic around the API. So
great.
Too.
So what's to come now this year?
Cool. So right. So instead of going through a big laundry list of features and data sets, I think every year we release about 60, on the order of 60 kind of notable changes and upgrades to enhancements to our product. What I thought I'd do, mostly for kind of time reasons, is outline 3 kind of main product themes, which we'll be focusing our attention on throughout the year. If there are any more granular questions on any of them, we can try to get through them in the Q&A session at the end, if that makes sense. So, right. So the first theme, perhaps unsurprisingly, is continuing our expansion, the expansion of our international offering. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation, we recently expanded our company coverage to 53 million companies across 31 countries. This year, there are 2 dimensions in which we're expanding that. So in addition to deepening the data that we hold in each country, we'll also be growing the total number of companies that total number of countries and companies, of course, that we cover. So in terms of figures, we're expecting that by the middle of this year, we expect to cover something like on the order of 150 million companies across something like 100 different jurisdictions around the world. That includes places like the US and Canada and Australia and a bunch of other jurisdictions. The reason I'm excited about this one is that it really speaks to the power of connecting different data sets together. Even in the UK alone, you can already see companies are not isolated anymore. They have interactions with other countries, and you can link these data sets together to really surface much more insight, get more value out of the data. So that's the first theme, doubling down on international expansion. The second, and again linked to one of the main slides from earlier, and actually something we're excited about, I'm really pleased to announce that actually today, this morning, we officially launched our brand new API portal. So the first, I guess, most important thing to say about the new portal is that it's open to anyone. Anyone can visit it and sign up for a totally free API key to take the API that we discussed earlier for a spin. This is something that's really rare in the company information space. For those of you who've had the mispleasure of dealing with other providers and trying to get get your hands on something to see if it really works for you. So as of today, this process on UDL takes about 30 seconds to complete. Other than a cap on the total number of calls you can make, obviously, on this free key, the trial key is completely functional. So I really encourage everyone here to give it a try, or at least mention it to anyone in your company who you think might be interested. We'd love to get your feedback. Other than the free trial keys, the portal is really the go-to place for all things API. So once you have a key, you can see your detailed usage stats, get notifications about your usage, and so on. Lots of key management features like whitelisting certain IPs for security purposes, delegation of key access to external developers, upgrading of plans, and so on. So really making getting up and running with it very, very easy. Support, FAQs, and so on, code examples, a status page to show you when the API is up, and so on. So you can actually reach that page right now just by visiting dudeal.com/API, following the sign up links, and from there you can also, of course, access all the documentation that I mentioned earlier, which I think is at dudeal.com/API /API/docs. You can also just visit that. Right, so finally, a third core theme for 2018 is going to revolve around enabling our users to embed due deals data and functionality even more quickly and easily into their day-to-day workflows, not just by using our API, but by building out direct integrations and working with different partners to make sure that our data basically gets put to work everywhere that it can be of use and everywhere that people are already working. So I've just highlighted a few here. So examples of native integrations you can expect include the most popular CRM packages, so things like Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, but also general purpose integration tools like Zapier, which some of you may be familiar with, which enables companies to easily hook up different online services to each other without really needing dedicated engineering resource. So again, lowering the barriers to adoption and to getting this data flowing, basically. And that's it for me. Yeah.
Thanks, Naman. That was fantastic.